but he built a reputation there. Look, it's neither here nor there. I picked your name out of the Tampa Tribune a couple of weeks ago, and I said, here's a contender. And then I saw how much money you were able to raise, and I said, well, now we have a real contender because your primary field is expanding. It seems to grow every day. Todd Wilcox is in the studio. He is a candidate for the Senate seat that Marcus Aurelius abandoned, and now he's saying, I never said I didn't like being in the Senate. Too late. I can't wait till he's in the private sector. If I had my druthers, he'd be, a public defender for the rest of his life and have to do as much pro bono work as we could possibly heap upon that office. But that's just me. And that's what happens when you betray me, because people who know me in this marketplace know that I can help you to get elected, but I can help you to get unelected just as easily. And that's the beauty of this microphone. It's like I get to say, liar. Anyway, so Todd Wilcox had the nerve to actually come into the studio. That's rare. But he's a former sniper. I don't think I can scare him. Former CIA officer. He probably already seen my FBI background check, and he knows what buttons not to push and which ones to push. He's a Green Beret. I have a Green Beret. It was given to me by a special operations group, but I didn't earn it. But it sits proudly in my house. And I'm not a millionaire, and you are. So there's the similarities and the differences. Now, the minute he walked into the studio, I attacked him, and I said, you ran for the wrong office. So he, unlike most people who would have whimpered and said, well, what do you think I should have done? He said, no, I always start at the top. So explain why you picked this seat this year.
Joyce, thanks for having me in the show and having me on the show and in your studio. And I appreciate it. And I could feel the energy in here as soon as I walked in. So the question was, why am I doing this?
Yeah, why'd you pick a vacant Senate seat in South Florida, and when, for the most part, you've already got 5 declared opponents in the primary?
Sure. Well, the why is pretty easy. It's a long list of reasons why, but at the end of the day, it's just fatigue. I'm tired of where we're going as a nation. I'm fed up with going into the voting booth and holding my nose and picking the least worst candidate. And in the absence of a candidate that I want to vote for, I'm going to be the candidate I want to vote for. I am a part of this movement that we're seeing that's sweeping across America, and it's sweeping across Florida, and it's fueled by this fatigue with career politicians. If we can't return to a citizen government, our constitutional republic is going to fade away. And I'm not going to stand by and watch that happen. I'm going to wake up on the 9th of November and know I did everything in my power to change course. And I would challenge every listener that hears my voice today to ask if they can do the same thing. Will they be able to wake up on the 9th of November and say they did everything in their power to turn course for where we're going? This is a disaster.
Yeah, it is a disaster. And I think what you represent to me is something that I have long said. I am tired of sending lawyers to Washington because all they do is muck it up. I mean, they just have to overword every single bill, and they don't know how to fight. So, my motto for an older soldier years ago was send the warrior to Congress, not a lawyer.
It's time to elect warriors, not lawyers.
If you don't have that fighting spirit, if you don't have the spirit of service, see, that's what it's about, because this is not going to be a fun job for you. I know everybody, on the outside looks in, but I have spent enough time at the Hill working with these people who get elected into the Senate and get elected into the Congress. There is so much frustration, so much tedium, so little gets done. You got to go to work today knowing that nothing's going to happen.
Right. Well, at the end of the day, this isn't a job. I'm stepping up to serve, not as a career. I don't need a job right now. I've been the beneficiary of our great free market capitalist economy. I'm doing this because I want to serve. And at the end of the day, if you look at the problems we have in America, these are the symptoms. Mm-hmm. These are just the symptoms.
Oh, yeah.
The disease is career politicians. It's career politicians on both sides of the aisle. And if we can't return to a citizen government, there's no hope for us.
No, I would tend to agree with that, but would you believe that there should be term limits? I mean, I think one of the problems that happens is people go up there and they forget where they came from. They move to Washington and they begin a life that centers around D.C.
I do believe in term limits, and I've made the pledge, the oath to all of those who hear my voice, that I will only serve 2 terms in the Senate. I put out a plan about 8 weeks ago that called for a constitutional amendment for term limits. Mm-hmm. It's a 5-point plan that requires term limits of 12 years, both in the House and the Senate. Strip them of any pension benefits, force them to read every bill that they vote on.
Good luck
Wouldn't
with
that be a novel idea? Eliminate any exemptions. Anything they pass, they have to live by just like the rest of us. And the one that David Jolly likes the most is ban them for life from ever being K Street lobbyists.
Yeah.
If we do those 5 things, there's no aspect of a career up there. They will go up and serve and then go home. And that's what our founding fathers envisioned.
Absolutely. And it's not a stepping stone. You know, like my problem with Marco Rubio was that he viewed running for a Senate seat in my state, where I only get 2 of these guys to go up there and deliberate. He decided that it was a stepping stone to either the vice presidency or the presidency almost immediately upon impact, because otherwise there's no explaining the bill of the Gang of Eights bill for immigration. There's no way that he walked out of this studio swearing that he would not do that and goes up there and does that unless he was promised something great at the other end. So what happened to me? Where was my representation in the Senate? When they were debating and deliberating, where was my representative? You know who it was? Bill Nelson. Gee, thanks, okay? A guy who, when I go to visit his office, they hand me off to some 22-year-old, or this is our immigration aide, and I'm sitting there and I'm using terminology with this aide, and the aide's looking at me like, hey, I just got out of Georgetown and I really don't know what you're talking about. You know, that's Bill Nelson. So here I was anticipating I was going to have a whole new entree into the Senate, into the thinking of the chambers, and I get a guy who immediately launches a presidential campaign. How do I know you're not the same kind of guy?
Well, I think you can look at my background and my experience, and there's a contrast. When you put the 5, and we have a very crowded field of candidates right now, and I respect their service. If you look at the contrast, it's stark. Contrast in motivation. Again, I'm doing this out of frustration and desperation,
So
not out
Carlos.
of aspiration. They're doing it out of aspiration. Those 3 guys are career politicians, and Carlos Baruf is a political insider if there ever was one.
Well, he certainly donated a lot of money to
$1 million.
candidates. Yeah.
He has donated $1 million to candidates over the last 15 years on both sides of the aisle, and he's reaped
Mostly
the rewards.
Republicans. He's been a big benefactor. I know. I've hit him up for money for candidates.
He's created 18 LLCs so he can funnel money to candidates that he would otherwise be limited to $500 apiece. If it's not illegal, it should be. He is an insider. He's a commensurate insider. But the contrast is 27 years of real-world experience. I've led men into combat more than once. I've served as an infantry officer. I've served as a special forces commander with a Green Beret. I have served as an Arabic-speaking CIA case officer on the front lines of the global war on terrorism. And over the last 10 years, I've built not 1, but 3 very successful businesses that operate in 6 different sectors of our economy and 14 countries around the world. I've created 600 jobs, 80% of which are veterans. I have real-world experience. That's the contrast between me and the other guys. And you can look me in the eye and know that I'm telling you the truth.
You got to say that more, 80% are veterans. I'll tell you right now, because that is a winning message, that you created jobs and that you gave them to people who deserve the chance when they got back into the civilian world. Because I think the biggest frustration that most of us feel is watching, some unaccompanied minor from Central America receive more benefits than a veteran.
No, you're right. That's another point of contrast. If you go to my website, toddwilcox2060.com, and you look at the issues page, you'll see well thought out, well articulated, concise, but very detailed policy positions. The veterans is one of them. We've been at war for 15 years, but in fact, our soldiers and our intelligence officers and our law enforcement officers have been at war. We as the public have been at the mall or Ruth's Chris.
Right.
You don't feel the effects of war here, and now less than 5% of our population know anybody in the military or serve in the military.
Right.
That divide is getting wider and wider every day. We need to take care of those who fight our nation's wars.
Absolutely. We got to take a break. We'll be right back. My guest is Todd Wilcox. He is in the studio, something that not many will dare to do. So there, right there, you have that's a character statement in and of itself. And while people laugh, my advice to him, and I'll say this on the air, was not to give up the seat he was in spite of the pressure that was placed upon him by party insiders and all of the consultants who said, you will stand a better chance in this other district. And I said, not only will you lose that district, but you will lose it embarrassingly to a jerk who's now, if you get the nomination, will be running against you for the Senate seat in one Patrick Murphy. And if you want to talk about a long list of money handling, we can start talking about Patrick Murphy as soon as you get the nomination or someone else does, because I have plenty of ammunition there. But, my question to you still is, this is a big state. I don't know what part of the state you reside in. Northern? You're in Tampa
No,
or in Tampa?
I live in Orlando. I grew up in Tampa,
you
but
live
I
in
live
Orlando.
in Orlando. Yeah.
Okay, so you're native to Florida. You pretty much understand the difference between Tampa and Orlando
I
then,
do.
right?
Yep.
And you understand that corridor is now filled with people like me who have Hispanic backgrounds, who most of the time come to this country and immediately think they're supposed to be Democrats, and then it takes a lot of convincing to move them into independents or Republicans. But you've got a big influx of Puerto Ricans like me who have come into this country in the last, I'd say, 3 years because of the economy in Puerto Rico, and they vote.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
excited to vote.
They're already registered.
Yeah,
in these
they're
things.
excited to vote.
Yeah.
And it's the convincing of people like that are going to be key in this primary. Not so much in the general election, where I think you'll probably have much broader appeal than your opponent.
Oh, certainly.
Well, don't say certainly, because
No, I'm the candidate that
dirty
can-
tricks happen.
I am the candidate that can win the general election. That's
I
the
think
case
so.
I've been making because I have 27 years of real-world experience in the two issues that are going to define this election, national security and economy.
Right.
He has no such experience. And those issues transcend party lines. We have 3 million non-party affiliated voters in Florida. They're going to decide who the next senator is going to
I
be.
hope so, and that's the way it's supposed to work. Unfortunately, there is this aspect of parties and fundraising that makes that sometimes impossible. The DNC will pour a fortune into this election. I'm telling you right now, because they want the seat back.
Right.
They want 2 Senate seats in the state of Florida. They want to sway national elections more than we've been doing. We're just too unpredictable. They don't like that. And they will pour a ton of money. And I will tell you this about the RNC. They're not going to give you a dime until you raise a certain amount of money. They are vicious.
They're
in
not
that
going to get
way.
involved until we have a nominee.
Even once you're a nominee, they're not going to get involved until you prove you can fundraise, and not just fundraise for yourself. I mean, I'm watching the Donald story this morning, and I'm thinking, I predicted this 3 weeks ago. I told one of the Trump aides, I said, well, if he decides he's going to, not self-fund, I said the first thing he's going to be asked to do is go fundraise for other people, and he's going to have to say yes. And that's what was announced this morning,
Right.
that he's going to be raised. And that's what's going to be you. You're the perfect guy to drag around to places like Fort Worth, Texas, and places where there are military bases in North Carolina and upstate New York. They're going to take you there to raise money, and your eye will be off the ball, and the DNC will know it. And they will come after you with everything they have. And that's like, look, I think you could stand up to it, but you got to know what's ahead of you.
Yeah. Well, first things first, we got to win the primary. And you
That's
nailed
true.
it. The 35% of all registered super voters, those Republicans that vote in primaries, live in the I-4 corridor. I live an hour from either side of the I-4 corridor. I've put in the resources to get this started. I've put in more than $1 million of my own money into this. I've been the beneficiary of our great capitalist, free market capitalist society. I've put that investment in. I have passion in this.
Isn't that sad?
It's reality
That-
what
when
it
you
is.
said,
There's a barrier to entry.
Will you said to the listeners, will you wake up on November 9th and say, I did all I could? Most of us can't do what you did.
No, most of us can't. And there's a barrier to entry to do this. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing it. I want to be the catalyst for a return to citizen government. But going back to the election, there's a crowded field of career politicians and political insider. There's 1.5 million super voters in the state of Florida. If they all turn out, we need a certain number to win. We don't need all of them. We don't need a majority. We need plurality. And so that's what we're focused on. And I'm focused on the I-4 corridor up to Jacksonville, down to Naples, here in Southeast, and up in the Panhandle.
Yeah.
And where people hear my message, a message of limited government, a message of freedom and equality and liberty, a message of deregulation, getting the federal government out of our back pockets and out of our backyards, and a return to citizen government, it's resounding. I mean, it's encouraging, the feedback I'm getting. And we saw it in Brevard, where we had a Senate forum run by the Republican Liberty Caucus. Afterwards, the supervisor of elections put on a straw poll, and I won 72% of the vote. A week later, Hillsborough Republican Executive Committee did the same thing, and I got 75%
Yeah, well,
of the
they're
vote.
not going to give you many more of those opportunities, because that's not the result they wanted. And that's
it's
why
not the
I'm telling you,
establishment, but the candidates won't show up,
right,
because
this is
the contrast is so stark.
And the establishment, after a while, says, no, we're not going to do this, because they have their favorite horses, regardless of what.
Well, they have
their
a challenge.
Quality.
They're in the opposite position we were in the last election cycle, where they have 10 seats to defend. If they lose 4, Schumer becomes the Senate Majority Leader. And so that's the fight they have on their hands. Florida's a big state. It's 3 states in one. We have 3 of the most expensive media markets here in Florida
Yes,
from
we
the
do.
nation. And so what I'm telling everybody is I'm the candidate that can win the general election for the reasons that I've laid out here today. I've put $1 million of my own money into it. I'm the second largest in terms of cash on hand. I'm raising money like crazy right now. The momentum is building. Finally, Florida is waking up to the fact that there is a Senate race before us.
Right.
And like I said, the momentum is in my favor. And so I am confident that I'm going to win this primary.
Oh, good. The confidence is the first quality that people look for in a leader. And I will tell you that of all the things that you listed as parts of your platform, as the principles that you live by, do not forget to use service. The word means a lot to the Americans, and most of the people who are running for office in any seat anywhere cannot claim service. And there's something that makes the rest of us feel awestruck when we hear it.
Right.
Particularly voters. I mean, I don't know how the people who watch the Kardashians feel about it. But when you say, I served in the military, I served in the, I was a Green Beret, I was in the CIA, that is a very important, for some of us, it's that final checked box.
Right.
And don't miss, put it everywhere, anywhere you can.
Right.
I mean,
well, that comes from where I grew up. I mean, coming from a poor kid in South Tampa, raised by a single mom, to the experiences I've had over the last 27 years, it is all focused on bringing it back and serving America. And that's a big component of what I'm trying to do.
Well, I will tell you this. I am, as people on this radio station know, I am friends with two of the other candidates, and I have informed both of them that I will not make an endorsement prior to the election. But I will tell you this. Right now, I think you're the only one who could win.
Well,
right
I appreciate
now.
that. That sounds like an endorsement to me. That sounds like an endorsement to me.
But it's as close as you're going to get. And I didn't say that to anybody else, because for me, this seat, I did everything within my power to see that Marco Rubio's career ended, and I want it ended. But I wasn't really willing to sacrifice the Senate seat. My hope was that he would stay in the Senate, because I thought no matter what happened, he would be able to be reelected and we would keep that seat. But since that's not a possibility, I am now convinced that if we don't find someone who can win that seat, it's going to be very ugly.
Well, I'm the guy that can win that seat, and that's my mission. My mission is to keep this seat in the Republican Party.
ToddWilcox2016.com. That's the website. Get involved. If you have another candidate in this race, then you better light a fire under them as well, because I think Todd is coming to get them.
Yeah, and tell them, if you're listening and you have another candidate in this race, that they better eat their Wheaties and cinch down their rucksack straps.
Thank you for coming in.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.